Good?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see everybody. Welcome to Harbour, Florida. Nice to see the familiar faces. And it's nice. It's a nice opportunity to start learning the Parashat of the week already on a Monday night. It's a lot of hard work for me because that means I got to cram between yesterday and today. But it's nice because then we have opportunity to think about the Parashat and prepare to share, every day. Although physically we're supposed to prepare for Shabbat all the way from Sunday, right, a little bit every day. Also spiritually, the Parashat, we should prepare every day, so this way we come with a full baggage of what to share with our families on Shabbat on the Parashat HaShavua. This week we're learning Parashat Vayeshev, and listen to a following true story. This story happened in the great city of New York, for our fellow New Yorkers, and there's a family, the Cohen family, and they were traveling to their extended family to spend the holiday. And on their way coming back, as all of us know when we travel with kids, there's baggages and baggages and baggages, and there's some more and more and more and more, and add some tax on top of that, and you got even more. So you can imagine the car is full, the van's full, you put stuff on top, tying it down, and there was one that, maybe Mr. Cohen was a little lazy on how tight he tied it down. In the middle of the expressway, he's driving, and he sees the guy driving next to him, and he's pointing at the top of the car. And okay, so he knows it had something to do with the bag, but there's no shoulder, so he couldn't stop and pull over. Fine. Gets to the next exit, and lo and behold, he gets over and he sees that the bag was missing. Thinking right away how much was in that bag, happened to be, out of all the bags, there was some jewelry in there, and there was some clothes and shoes, but the thing that was bothering him the most, guess what was bothering him the absolute most that was in that bag? His tefillin. Very good.
Oh, wow.
His tefillin were in there also. So, as Providence had it, that bag, the most important bag, was the one that fell over. They're getting home. They're really, really not feeling good about it. As soon as they finish unloading the car, they get a phone call. And they say, "Is this the Cohen family?" "Yes." "Were you traveling from Brooklyn? Were you on the causeway?" "Yes." "Well, I think I found something that belongs to you." "Who is this?" "Noah." "Noah what?" "My name's Noah. You want to come get it? Here's the address. It's in Lower Manhattan. You're welcome to come pick it up." So the husband and wife, they were like, it's a weird phone call. Guy, monotone, just asking to come pick up. Maybe the guy's a criminal. It's not the greatest place in town. For those who know New York, Lower Manhattan's not the greatest. They decided to go. There was a lot of things they lost over there. They get to the man's apartment, and they realize very quickly that it was a teenager, and it looked like a teenage runaway. They realized he was Jewish, Cohen. So they asked him, "Well, what happened?" He said, "I was driving my motorcycle on the causeway, and all of a sudden I see on the floor some diamond studs." And he's like, "Hashem is talking to me. This is an amazing miracle." Has that happened to anyone ever before? Not me, not yet.
No.
Okay. So he sees studs on the floor, and he sees there's more stuff to follow, more and more and more, and then he sees a whole suitcase. Packs everything up quickly, takes it home. Comes home, and he's very excited for his new find. And while he's going through, he sees two velvet bags. One of them was a talit, and one other bag was tefillin. He sees on the name of the tefillin, says as follows, Menachem ben Shlomo Zalman HaKohen. Sounds like a very Jewish name, right? Menachem ben Shlomo Zalman HaKohen. He opens up the phone book. Can you imagine how many Cohens there are in New York?
I don't even know they made phone books anymore.
This was back. No. This is an older story. It's an older story. Okay, there was still a lot of Cohens, and he came to the conclusion that this family must be heading towards Brooklyn based on the direction that they were traveling on the causeway, and they must have been away for Shabbat or for the holidays. So he started going through, and he was going and going. Can you imagine how many? He was about to give up, and he said, "I'm going to give one last chance." And he calls this family, and it was theirs.
Wow.
So they asked him, "So why would you, what?" He said, "When I saw the name of the tefillin, I remembered something very special." He He said, Shlomo Zalman was my father's name, and my father passed away. I'm not a good person. He started confessing to them, I take whatever I see. It's yours, it's mine, it's whatever, that's the way of my life. But I saw this name, and it was like a signal, like a reminder. And when I was about to give up, normally I'm not going to do it. And then when I was about to give up, I said, I'll do one more for the sake of my dad. And I landed on you. So Mr. and Mrs. Cohn, they're like, can I invite you over for Shabbos, for Shabbat? They said, we don't want, no. So he handed him $100 and he took his stuff. Back in the day, it was some good money. And they're very appreciative. Amazed, can you imagine, Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, amazed on how the namesake or the image, the lessons of a person's father, no matter how far they are at this current moment, was able to make a tremendous impact on this boy. This week we read about Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef ends up in Egypt. He ends up becoming the viceroy of the most powerful empire in his day and age. Okay? He becomes the custodian of Potiphar's entire household. He was making his way up. Mrs. Potiphar put her eye on Yosef. And she coveted him. She was trying to set him up. Listen to the following pasuk. This pasuk is found in chapter 39, pasuk Yud Aleph 11. Vayhi ki hayom hazeh, and it so happened to be on this day. We'll see what that means. Vayavo habayta la'asot melachto, and Joseph comes home to work. Ve'en ish me'anshe habayit sham babayit. In the house, none of the other workers were there. Do you know what day this was? Does anyone know? Doctor, you know what day this was. This is a very... Sunday. Okay. So Sunday back in the day, or maybe it was like the season. Maybe it was Christmas. Maybe it was New Year's. Lahavdil back in the days. Okay? It was a day of their holiday. And everybody was in the Bet Avodah Zarah. They were going and they were worshiping their idols. They were doing something over there. He comes home and no one's there except for Mrs. Potiphar. Mrs. Potiphar, on that day, can you imagine a festive day, everyone dresses up, fancy schmancy. She's sick. She's faking sick because she knows that everyone's going to be by the party. Everyone's going to be at the mosque, at the church, whatever you wanted to call it back then, except for the Jew, except for Joseph. But look at what the Torah says. It says that he comes to do his work. La'asot melachto. Well, what type of chidush is that? Is there anything that the Torah is trying to teach us? The Talmud actually, in Masechet Sotah, has a disagreement. What work was he coming to do? Was he coming, one opinion, to just do his regular work? Right? He was now the custodian. He was in charge. He was the manager of Potiphar's household, his businesses, everything to do. He had work to do. Another opinion in the Talmud says he actually came and he decided, you know what? Today's the day I'm going to give in to my temptation. This was one opinion that what went through Yosef HaTzadik's mind. The Midrash, and then what happens? The Talmud continues. Talmud continues and says, right before Yosef was about to commit a sin with Mrs. Potiphar, the image of his father came up to him and warned him, be careful, this is a test. If you fail this test, you will lose your place amongst the Shvatim. Look what happened, Yosef. He fulfills the test, he passes the test, and now he's even given the place of two Shvatim, both his children, Menashe and Ephraim, each have a specific Shevet. The Midrash says that there was a Roman noble woman who would come to Rabbi Yosef, one of the Tanaic scholars, one of the Gemara scholars in the Gemara, and would ask him, how is it possible that such a young man, Yosef was under 20 years old over here, 18, 19, how is it possible that such a young man is able to overcome such a temptation? Day in, day out, day in, day out. She was trying to seduce him. She was trying to get him. And Yosef every day not. And the day that it was a possibility to, he still didn't fail. How's it possible? Rabbi Yosef answered this Roman noble woman that it's because of the image of his father. Chazal, our sages, teach us that this idea of the image of one's father is not patented by Yaakov Avinu. Yes, he's the one that our Torah speaks about, but this is actually a goal that every parent should have to impress upon their children. We are to become that, so to say, that guardian angel onto our children and maybe even onto our grandchildren. Also, we should know that Yaakov Avinu's face is not going to pop up in our kids' minds. It's going to be our face. If we train them the right way, if we have that great relationship with our children, it can be us and only us that saves our children. But it depends on something. It depends on what type of impression do you leave on your children when you do spend time with them. Do you care about things which are important, which are valuable, which are moral and ethical? Or are you putting emphasis on other things? I'll give a classic example. Shabbat table, everyone's sitting, and a guest spills a just freshly served glass of wine all over the table and gets you dirty as well. How you gonna respond? Okay, that's not too much of a test. I'll tell you what a greater test is. What if it's your kid that knocked it over and it all got you dirty and it fell on you? That's a greater test. And then what do you put an importance on? On embarrassing, whether it's your child or the guest? Or is the tablecloth more important? Or is your clothes, your white shirt on Shabbat, is that more important? What's more important? When we make an emphasis, what's more important? Saying the truth or making an extra buck? These are the things our children pay attention to. When we lead our lives by example, when we give our children that proper, nourishing education, then we have the power to get into our children's minds and have them pause before they may do the unthinkable. Because they're going to say, what would my father, what would my mother think of me if they knew that I did this? It's good old Jewish guilt, you might say, but it's very true. Yaakov Avinu was able to do this with Yosef. This father of this boy Noah, true story, was able to do it with his son even though his son was away and maybe not on the derech, not really fulfilling. It's something that each and every one of us as parents can do with our children. I remember as a child growing up, you find yourself in certain situations where it's very easy to compromise. It's too easy to compromise. But then, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one. I don't think I'm the only one. What would my father say if he saw me do this? What would my mother say? What would they think of me? We need to give our children a combination of, self-control yet confidence at the same time. So much confidence that they'll want to live up to our expectations. This is something that Yaakov Avinu was very successful in doing, in allowing Yosef to overcome this temptation. Now let's get back to the storyline and figure out how is it exactly that Yosef ends up in the land of Egypt. We're going to go back to Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, at the age of 84, is at his chuppah. Remember we said this last week? 84 years old is when he gets married to Leah, the first time thinking it's Rachel, a week later to Rachel. He works another 7 years. Now many don't know this, however, Rachel did not get pregnant all of those 7 years. Unless you follow clearly the timeline with what the Chumash is talking about, we don't know. Is it a short time that she's barren? Is it a long time she's barren? It's 7 years. To some, that's an eternity. To others, it's not too bad. 7 years later, she has Yosef. Yosef being Yaakov Avinu's prize, amazing child. At that moment, Yaakov is 91 years old. At 91, he decides, I'm going to stay in my father-in-law's house for another 6 years, and I'm going to work to have a parnasah for my family. I got 12 children, it's 11 boys, 1 girl, I got 4 wives, right? It's hard enough for us to keep up with 1 wife. Can you imagine 4 wives? It's hard enough for us to keep up with 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. Can you imagine 12 kids? So, and he was successful at it. He did a great job. He was so successful, his father-in-law felt slighted that he left with all of his wealth. Yaakov was blessed. He leaves at the age of 97, right? He was 91 when Yosef was born. 97, he leaves. We know from last week, he's about to meet his brother, that whole encounter we spoke about. He spends 2 years, almost 2 years, getting home. And during those 2 years, he did have a hard time. He had the unfortunate, he had that whole meeting and that scare with his brother, Esav. He had the unfortunate event of Shechem. Well, then he had the fight with the angel. He had Shechem, the son of Hamor, who defiled his daughter Dinah. It was a horrible atrocity back in the time, just as it would be today. Lo aleinu v'lo alechem. And then his wife, the love of his life, Rachel, passes away at a very young age. According to most commentaries, does anyone know how old she was when she passed away? 36 years old. Very young, very young. Yaakov Avinu is now coming home. He gets word that his mother passes away also. So he's coming home after 36 years, after being sent by his father and mother, with some baggage. It was hard. He comes home, he's at the age of 99, and that would make his son Yosef 8 years old. He comes home, he's greeted by his father, and he spends the last 21 years of Yitzchak Avinu's life with Yaakov and Yosef. It was like a trilogy. Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Yosef, they spent good quality time together in the tent, learning Torah, and getting to know each other very well, and growing, preparing for the subsequent generations that were going to follow. 9 years after Yaakov Avinu reaches back home, Yosef is at now the age, if you're following with the math, I'll help you if not, 17 years old. So he's past bar mitzvah already, 17 years old, and he leaves. Can you imagine? The first time Yosef leaves the tent, besides for his travel back from his grandfather Lavan's house to Yitzchak's house, he leaves the tent, he leaves the yeshiva for the first time at 17 years old. Chazal tell us he did 2 mistakes. When he left, he made 2 mistakes that we can all learn from. And this is at his level. We never judge our patriarchs and the biblical characters compared to us, because if we do what they did and what they did wrong, we'd be great even. But at their level, Hashem judges them at a stronger level. They're for lessons for us to learn. He did 2 mistakes. Number 1 was, I'll read it to you. This is right, the second verse in our Parashat says, so Vayeshev Yaakov beretz megurei aviv beretz Canaan, and Yaakov comes to sit and rest and settle down in the land of his father Yitzchak in Canaan, which would one day be Israel. Ele toledot Yaakov Yosef ben 17 shana. So Joseph is 17 years old. Okay, I said the truth. Good. Haya ro'eh et echav batzon vehu na'ar et bnei vilha et bnei zilpa neshei aviv. So what does this mean that he's a na'ar? Na'ar means a lad. We already know he's 17 years old. We know 17 is not a mature adult. We know he's 17 years old. So you know what Chazal tell us? Rashi tells us also that Yosef did something very immature. Don't take this to heart. If we do it, it would be even considered a mitzvah to many of us. What he does is he goes and he makes his hair nice. Okay, I'm not looking at anybody specific. Okay, he goes and he beautifies himself. He starts looking in the mirror. He's saying, "Hey, at a certain age, almost every boy goes through this." He looks in there and says, "Hey, I look good. Let me look even better." This was his first mistake. Why is that a mistake? Because what he was doing was he was beautifying himself, maybe with not the wrong intentions, but we know that when you start doing things that call attention to yourself, you start igniting the Yetzer Hara. You start igniting the evil inclination that, unfortunately, because he acted in this way, is what brought him on the problems of the wife of Potiphar. So this was his first mistake. Although we can rationale for him. We can say that, there is a mitzvah for someone who is observant, someone who does learn Torah and keep mitzvot to take care of themselves. Because the way of the Torah and the way of living a committed life to Judaism and Torah is not to be downtrodden and disgusting, chas v'shalom, and disregarded. Right? The Talmud says that a Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar who has a stain on their garment, is liable for death penalty. To that degree of how much a person who is committed to Torah should still take care of themselves. But I guess on Yosef, at his great level, he put too much emphasis on the mundane and on the physicality and on the way he looked. This was his first mistake. His second mistake was the way he spoke about his brothers to his father. This is something we all know. He actually said 3 different things which were derogatory, which would constitute of Lashon Hara, and he was reciprocated with 3 punishments, midah kineged midah, measure for measure. Listen to the 3. The first is he came and he told his father, do you know that my brothers are eating from a live animal? Where's the shechita? Well, if they'd be vegetarian, then they wouldn't have this issue, but they weren't. Must mean that we should eat meat, right? We won't speak about that. That was the first mistake that he did. What was his punishment? Rashi tells us, his punishment to that was that his brother slaughtered a goat and dipped his very beautiful garment in blood when given to his father. So you're coming and saying that we are eating from live animal? We'll show you who's boss. We'll teach you right. Next, he came and he told his father that the children of Leah, the 6 boys of Leah, were disregarding, disrespecting, and treating the other boys, the other 4 boys of the Bnei Shfachot, the children of Zilpah and Bilhah, they're treating them differently. You know what they came and did? They sold him as a slave. You're saying that we're treating the slave woman's children differently? We'll teach you. You'll be a slave. And the third is, well, again, these punishments were a combination of the brothers, but also of Hashem obviously ordaining them. The third is that he came and he told his father, you know that they are not so tzanua. They're not living up to your moral and ethical expectations. They're unfortunately involved in illicit and promiscuous relationships that they're not doing the right thing. Oh yeah? You know what Hashem said? We'll test you. We'll test you. Worry about yourself first. And that was the test of Potiphar's wife. So this is Yosef. Yosef then is sent by, so he already has this history to him, that he's the favored son. Yaakov keeps him in the tent with him and with Yitzchak. He gives him a cloak. We learn lessons from this that as parents we shouldn't show any favoritism to one child over another. We need to encourage them. It doesn't mean that each child gets everything that the other one gets, but to make a large favoritism on one child over another is definitely not a good thing. Again, different children need different things, right? If one child does need help in sports or needs a special tutor to help them in school, and the other one doesn't get that, well, that's not favoritism. And we need to explain that to our children, that every child gets what they need. You get what you get, and you don't, get upset. That's what you tell your children, your grandchildren. Okay? So Yosef was already shown favoritism. He is Bal HaChalomot. He's the dreamer. It's great to be a dreamer. Lahavdil elf havdalot. Albert Einstein was a dreamer. Some good came out of him? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So it's good to dream. But how do you share your dreams? Yosef was a dreamer. How do you share your dreams? Do you tell them to people that have good intentions for you? Or are you becoming a nuisance and annoying on your siblings that musters them up and starts boiling them to retaliate? That's what Yosef was. One day Yaakov, at 17 years old, tells Yosef, now you go out and call me your brothers. Tell them to come in. And he had to go all the way to the city of Dotan. It was a little trek away. And the brothers say, whoa, the dreamer's here. Let's see what's going to be with his dreams now. And they decided they were going to execute him. Done. Yehuda convinced them. Well, first, Reuven said, wait. He was the eldest. He said, wait. Let's put him in this pit. I gotta go now to Abba. He's calling for me. Let me go see what he needs. He'll come back. Let's not make a rash decision. By the way, great lesson in life. Never act out of impulse. Take a moment. If it wasn't for Reuven's initiative to, let's wait, let's throw him in a pit. It wasn't a great pit. There was snakes and scorpions in there. However, because of that, Yosef actually survived and was the cause of them being saved from the famine in years to come. 22 years to be precise. And he's thrown in the pit. They can't hold themselves back. They want to kill him. And then Yehuda, another leader amongst the brothers, even though he was not the oldest, he was the fourth child. He says, okay, we have some Ishmaelite merchant peddlers passing by. Let's sell him as a slave. We'll never have to think about him. Do we need his blood on our hands? He says. We don't. Let's sell him as a slave. Great opportunity. It's actually worse for him. Let him at least suffer. And they agreed. Yosef, not knowing what was going on, not even understanding how his own brothers could be so cruel to him, is sold as a slave and on his way down to Egypt, and I can guarantee you not for vacation. And he was sold from time and time, from one peddler to another peddler and another peddler, and he finds his way all the way to Egypt, to the house of Potiphar, after being put in the slave market. But there's something interesting the Torah tells us. This is in chapter 37, verse 25.
What age was it he was here?
He was 17 years old.
Still at 17, we're still in the same period.
That's it. At 17 is when his father told him to go retrieve your brothers, and that's when they kidnapped him and they sold him.
Within the same year, he went to prison, and came back.
Within what?
Within the same year, he went to to prison and he got the dreams and came back to.
So it was a year and a half. 1 year and a half.
Okay,
From the day he gets to Egypt, 1 year and a half later, he finds himself in prison. We'll speak about what he went through during that period, but that's not a long time. Okay, first of all, it's a very short time. He was blessed, as we're going to soon see, to climb up so high from being a slave to being in charge of slaves, to being the custodian, to being the CEO, the CFO, and everything to be, which Potiphar was the viceroy until years later, until Yosef comes out of jail. So Potiphar was the second man in all of Egypt, and he was the man right under him. So he was Mr. Number 3, if you want to call it, in Egypt, already in a year and a half at 18 and a half years old. It was very, very high level, coming from nothing. Okay, it's like, not like it hasn't happened before, it's like a non-American citizen becoming president. I said like it has not happened before, but it did. Okay. That's how improbable it was. Listen to this verse. This is a very powerful lesson. Pasuk says, I'm going to quote to you, this is 37:25. Vayeshevu le'echol lechem. So the brothers sit to eat a meal. Vaysu enehem. They raise their eyes. Vayir'u v'hineh orchat Ishmaelim ba migilad. And he sees an entourage of peddlers and merchants. Then they are traveling. Ugmalim nosi'im nechot utzri valot holechim lehorid mitzrayma. And they have all of these spices and products that they are traveling down to Egypt. Vayomer Yehuda elechav, and then Yehuda tells his brothers, great idea. Let's sell him as a slave. Let's teach him who's boss. It's better than killing him. Rashi tells us over here, the Torah is going out of its way to tell us that these merchants were carrying spices, good smelling spices. You know why? Because Hashem's always looking out for tzaddikim, for the righteous. Hashem's always looking out for his people, because they normally travel with kerosene and petroleum and very smelly, toxic smells and products. Hashem was looking out for Yosef, and he had let him go down with good perfume. I don't know, what do you guys like to wear? Hermes? What's in style nowadays? I don't know. Hugo Boss is gone, right?
No.
Good smell! Okay, can you imagine? Lo alenu v'lo alechem. You see a guy, I'm saying this about someone else, okay? But I'm saying, imagine if it's you, but not, okay? You see a guy who's arrested, and he's being thrown, and they're manhandling him. I don't know if you've ever seen someone live being arrested. It's not a pretty scene, okay? And they start manhandling the gentleman, and they throw him in the back of the police car, and they tell him, you are a criminal, you're going straight to jail. And you have a long sentence. I want my lawyer, I want my lawyer, I want my lawyer. No lawyer for you, you're going straight to jail. But don't worry. We'll put on some nice music for you on the way going there. We'll give you a good smell. So you have some good aroma, some good smell on your way there. Any station you want, we'll put on for you. Do you think the guy cares of the music he's listening to? Do you think he cares what he's smelling at that point? Do you think Yosef HaTzadik cares what type of smell or what they're carrying on the way going to Egypt? The guy's getting sold as a slave. He doesn't know what's going to be with his life. He's 17 years old. He thinks he's going to be a slave, sold a slave, die a slave, and that's it. Being taken away from his father. And you know what Rashi says? Hashem's looking out for his righteous people. What does that have to do with anything? Listen to the following analogy. Imagine a child. Imagine you as a child. You fell asleep. Who knows how? Right? You fell asleep and you wake up in a stranger's car. It's a very scary feeling, right? You wake up in a stranger's car and you say, "Sir, who are you? Where are we going?" And the guy doesn't answer you. And you keep on trying to get his attention. And you're a young child. And I don't know, let's say you're 8, 9 years old. You start getting scared. You've never been in this car before. You don't know who that man is. You're going to somewhere you don't know. And he turns around and he throws you a lunchbox. He says, "Eat." You open the lunchbox and you see it's your mommy's food. Do you feel good now? You do. You know that this guy might be on the phone, he might be preoccupied, but your mother sent him to pick you up because how else does he have a freshly prepared meal that was sent by my mom to me? This is what Hashem was showing Yosef. Yosef, I'll send you a sign that I'm taking you. You have your ups and you have your downs. This may be a down now, but I'm going to send you a sign that this is me. You know what the sign is? It never happens that these merchants, these peddlers, travel with good smelling spices only. They normally have their kerosene, the petroleum, all their garbage, all the smelly stuff. I'm sending you a sign that just as now you think you're at the lowest point and you're at the bottom, I'm with you now, I'll be with you the whole way. In our lives, believe it or not, we have those up and downs. We've all been through them. But you know what the difference is between someone who is connected to Hashem and not? Is not if the signs are there. The signs are there. Do you see the signs? Do you allow those signs to register? Someone who finds within their struggles, in their roller coaster, when you find Hashem through the study of Torah, through the fulfillment of his mitzvot, and you're able to locate, even as low and as hard as it is, even as impossible, it's the end of the tunnel and there's no light at the end of it. When you see and you look for, there's a sign, Hashem's there. That's what Hashem means. That's what Rashi means by he's looking out for his righteous people. He's there for them, even though they might think that he's not. This is what Yosef had. This is what we can create for ourselves as well. When we commit ourselves to Hashem, when we commit ourselves to learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvot, we are able to look for those signs, and I bet you'll find them. You will, just as Yosef did. Now we're going to speak about something which I know Tony Robbins likes, the 7 steps or the 7 principles of success. I'm giving you 4, okay? There's many more, but I'm giving you specific 4 that our Chachamim, our great Torah sages, drew specifically from Joseph. These 4 were the keys to his success, which are a recipe that we're able to apply to our own lives to succeed. And this is in any and every realm. As a child, as an adult, as a man, as a woman, in any department of life, one can apply these. They're fascinating. So Nachmanides, the Ramban, he tells us that Potiphar sees Yosef and he sees this guy's talented. This guy's smart. It took him some time to figure out that Joseph was actually educated, right? The vast majority of civilization back then couldn't read, write, speak, maybe be proficient in one language, never mind 70 languages. Yosef was one of the, let's put it this way, Yaakov, Yitzchak, Yosef, let's say Paro. There was a couple others. But Yosef was amongst the smartest human beings that walked the face of that earth back then. Potiphar is starting to realize this and he's getting excited. He's like, wow, this guy's amazing. He starts promoting him. He promotes him from being a slave who's doing janitorial services to being a server. This famous midrash, the Ramban brings this. He's Potiphar sitting at his meal, Yosef standing right next to him, and he tells him, I want a glass of cold water. Flask, pours him. Boom. Okay, I want hot water for tea. Yosef doesn't move. Same flask, pours hot water. Okay, I want coffee. Doesn't move. Boom. Okay, wine. Arak, if they had back then. Boom, he pours. And he's looking at him and he's saying, there's one of 2 options over here. He's either a good magician or a very good magician, because I've never seen this before. And then he's starting to see, and he's trying to look, what is he doing to make this trick work? It's amazing sorcery. Until Hashem, can you imagine this? The Midrash tells us. Hashem himself comes to Potiphar in a dream and tells him that Yosef has no trick. Yosef is sent here by me. Watch the way you treat him. Treat him nice. And then he was raised higher and higher to becoming the number 1 guy in Potiphar's household. So how do we attribute Yosef's success? Do you know in our whole Chumash, there's only one person the Torah tells us is Matzliach. You know what Matzliach means? Yeah. Successful. Yosef. He's the only person that the Torah says was an Ish Matzliach. Not Abraham, not Yitzchak, Yaakov, not Aharon, not Moshe, not David HaMelech. Only Yosef. So what we're going to explore tonight is what gave him that title of being successful? What gave him, what did he do to attract this success to him to flourish in such a fast time at such a young age? And how can we do it ourselves? So listen to the 4 of them. The first is, as we said, you might say this is a little primitive, but the sources say it very clearly. Yaakov favored his son not only because his son was the son of his most favorite wife, and he was more favored than Binyamin. You know why? Because it was the unfortunate birth of Binyamin that took Rachel's life. So Yaakov had a full-fledged positive association to Yosef, to which Binyamin had a little bit of a lacking, naturally. And you know what he did with him? He invested most of his time with him. Chazal teach us that Yaakov taught every single amount of Torah that he learned from the yeshiva of Shem Be'ever, from his father, from his grandfather, right? Don't forget that for the first 15 years of Yaakov's life, he actually lived with Abraham. He taught everything he knew to his son Yosef. You know what happens when you spend a lot of time with somebody, especially when you teach them? You start loving them. When you give to somebody, you love them. Who loves you more? Do you love your children more, or do your children love you more? I'm asking you, Rafael.
Children loves it.
No, we, the mother.
If you learn, if
You-
sing here, according to
Yeah.
according to yours,
Doc?
No, it's the mother who loves the children.
Who loves who more?
Parents. Parents.
Parents love their children more. You know why? Because you do more for your kids than your kids do for you.
Oh my God, I have to write that.
It's so true. It's very true. It's so true. Did your kid ever wake up in the middle of the night for you? In your life? In your life, did you ever wake up for your parents in the middle of the night? Maybe in their old age, maybe once. Your parents woke up every single night for you. For years. First to feed you, to change your diapers, when you cried, when you had a bad dream, when you fell off your bed. But we're going through this, right? I mean, maybe you've passed it already, but some of us are still going through it. Okay? And then what about when they get older and they start hanging out at night and they go in with friends and da. You think your parents are sleeping? Your parents love you multiple times more than you love them. But it's so simple. Why? Because they do so much more for you than you do for them. So Yaakov loved Yosef. He loved him so much, he invested. Can you imagine? He transmitted everything he knew to Yosef. This means Yosef is a product of a lot of Torah study. A lot. Right? 17 years of his life. He was only learning Torah with his father part of the time, and also part of the time with his grandfather and his father. The Mishnah in the beginning of the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avot, and we're not going to go through it now, but I'll just tell you the gist of it. It's interesting for anyone to open up. It says, Rabbi Meir says, that a person who learns Torah is going to be blessed with, and then he goes and he rattles off all the blessings you can imagine. Good health and success and happiness and strength and nobility and all the good things you want. To this, our first answer is, you know how we can attribute Yosef's success? It was to the fact that he was diligent in his Torah study, and he learned very deep, and he lived what he studied. Okay? This is the first answer. The second, as Rashi tells us, is that, I'll say it in Hebrew first, Shem Shamaim Shagur Befiv, which means God's name was always at the tip of his tongue. Yosef was one of those guys who would always be murmuring, Baruch Hashem, Bezrat Hashem, right? You know grandmothers like that? Okay? We should become like that, because that's how Yosef was successful. Baruch Hashem, Bezrat Hashem. It's all from Hashem. Imirtza Hashem. Always, everything, Hashem. And that's why, by the way, Potiphar thought he was a sorcerer. Because he was holding the flask. I want wine. Bezrat Hashem, it'll be wine. He poured it. I want coffee now. Bezrat Hashem, it'll be coffee. Boom, pour it. So Potiphar thought that Yosef was saying a spell. And Hashem warned him, saying, no. He's the real deal. This is no trickery. This is a sneak peek of what Moshe Rabbeinu is going to look like in 210 years from now. This is it. This is no tricks. For the very fact that he spoke and he always involved Hashem in his day-to-day life, non-stop, this is what gave him his success. Maimonides, the Rambam, writes, do you think it's by chance that our forefathers, King David amongst them as well, Moses, were shepherds? Do you know why they were shepherds? Because being a shepherd is the greatest type of job for a person to have a tranquil mind to contemplate their Creator, the world they live in, and themselves. Now, I guess different types of opinions to what type of job that would include nowadays. Some could tell you which ones are definitely not, like if you're in the construction business, okay? And others may tell you which ones could definitely be. That's why traditionally many of our sages, our Talmidei Chachamim, the past 100, 200, 300, 400 years, were, I wouldn't say merchants, they were store owners or salesmen. Because being a salesman is, I don't want to say it's easy, but you do have time, because between customers, you're sitting at your office, you're sitting at your desk, you're sitting at your store, you have merchandise, and people coming in, they need something, you sell it to them. No one's there, you're able to learn, you're able to advance yourself. The Rambam writes, this is why our sages specifically chose the preoccupation of being shepherds. So this way they had time to use all the time they could possibly use towards Hashem. Yosef was the same way, non-stop speaking about Hashem, non-stop. What does David HaMelech tell us? Shiviti Hashem lenigdi tamid. He always put Hashem opposite in front of him. He always imagined that Hashem was there. This is what Yosef did. You know how he did it? You know how he reminded himself? By always speaking about it. By always saying Hashem, Hashem, Hashem in his speech. Number 3. Chachamim tell us, our sages tell us, that blessing and being successful is dependent on morality and holiness. A person's level of morals and holiness is reflective on their success. Who could we imagine was at a very high level of morality and holiness? Yosef took nothing that was not his. He never stole. He had, as being the CFO, the CEO of Potiphar's corporation, he had all those opportunities. He had every opportunity to have any girl he wanted. Even his boss's wife wanted him. And you know what? The truth is he really wouldn't care about it. As we know, Potiphar was homosexual. He really didn't care. Only because she made a whole to-do out of it, that's how come he went to jail. Did you know that? And that's, by the way, why she was so envious of Yosef. Because her husband was not giving her any attention at all. You know that when Yosef was taken out of jail and given the position of being viceroy, he was brought in front of everybody, in front of all of Egypt. And there was like a massive parade. And everyone that came out was throwing gold at him and trying to get his attention. All the women came out to get his attention. They heard that a bachelor just came out of jail and became the viceroy. Who wouldn't want to marry such a guy? And they were throwing gold and personal items at him, to try to get his attention to look up. You know what Chachamim tell us? His eyes did not even lift. Okay, I'm going a little off tangent, except for when Osnat, his cousin, the daughter of Dinah, who was also sold as a slave, are you with me? Yes, you know this?
Yeah.
Okay. Through a kme'ah, a piece of parchment necklace that Yaakov Avinu wrote a blessing for her, because he knew that they were going to sell her as a slave because she came from an impure union, let's put it that way, an impure union, and they sold her as a slave. Only when she threw that necklace, that kme'ah, did Yosef lift his eyes and say, whose is this? And everyone was embarrassed. Who would, everyone's throwing gold and silver and jewels. Whose piece of garbage is this? And then he was led to Osnat. The level of morality and holiness he kept was second to none. Tormented day in, day out, trying to be seduced by your boss's wife. It's almost impossible at 17, 18 years old to outstand that. And he did it. This was the third ingredient to his success. We're going to go over them. And the fourth. I think the fourth is something. So we know, everyone knows Torah. Okay. We know Torah, that brings you success. We know that tefillah, having God's name always on, that's a good thing to do also. We all know deep down that being moral and holy is the right thing. But now listen to, in my opinion, the greatest of the recipe. The greatest one of this grand recipe of success. Listen to this. King Solomon wrote, the Midrash tells us, I'll tell it to you in Hebrew and in English, it says, V'ha Elohim yivakesh et hanirdaf. This is a verse in Kohelet, chapter 3, verse 15. that God always seeks the pursued. The Midrash goes on to say that Hashem is always there with the victim. Whoever is the one who's being chased, whoever is the victim, Hashem sides with them. And then it goes on, the Midrash, fascinating Midrash. If anyone's interested, I could email it to you or text it to you. It's a great read. It's a little paragraph, but it's a nice one. Goes on through 10 different examples of individuals who were the victims, who were being pursued, and how they prevailed. Number 1, Hevel. Hevel was pursued by his brother Cain. He was the one that was right. He passed away, he was killed, but he was right. Noach was pursued by all of the people in his generation. He was the one who was right. Avraham, pursued by everyone in his generation. He was pursued by Nimrod specifically, the Midrash says, and he survived. Yitzchak was pursued by the Plishtim, and he was right. Yaakov was pursued by his brother Esav, and he won. Yosef by his brothers, and he was the one who came up on top at the end. Moshe by Paro, David by Shaul, Shaul by the Plishtim, and finally the Midrash says Bnei Israel from the nations of the world. As we spoke about, was it 2 weeks ago? How anti-Semitism is the secret to our success of continuation, of survival. It's because anyone who's pursued, anyone who's the victim, has God on their side right away. The Midrash ends off and says that look at the animals, the type of animals that we would bring in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, time of the temple, as a korban. We would bring oxen, we'd bring sheep, we'd bring goats. Now let me ask you, wouldn't it be great to bring a lion, to bring a tiger, to bring a shark, I don't know, an eagle, the kings of the animal kingdom? Shouldn't they be given to our king? Guess what the answer is, Michael? No, why not? Because those animals are the predators. Hashem is on the side of the victim. Hashem is on the side of the pursued. Now, this doesn't mean we should turn ourselves into victims. It always takes two to fight. But as soon as we cannot escape the fight, as soon as there's already a fire, take a step away. Let them chase you. Let them sue you. Let them run after you. This is contrary to the society we live in. Society we live in today is the guy's not fulfilling his side of the deal. You go and you sue him. You be the attacker. You be the predator. Hashem is not on your side then. There's no machloket that both sides will win. The only time there's a winner by a machloket, by a fight, by a disagreement, is when one picks up and goes. And let them chase you. That's where your success will come. Can you imagine Yosef? He's being chased. All the 10 that we mentioned, always being chased, always the victims, always being pursued. Hashem's on their side. This is one of the 4 primary reasons why Yosef was successful. Because he didn't come back home and wage war with his brothers. He didn't kill them or attack them when they came into town. On the contrary, he taught them a lesson. He educated them. But he welcomed them with open arms. He was pursued by this one and by that one and non-stop. But he came up on top. This is an amazing thing we can learn from Yosef. You know why someone who's the victim and is pursued, Hashem sides with them? Because when a person is so helpless that they're the victim, they turn to Hashem. Yosef knew to turn to Hashem. Yosef knew how to escape machloket, run away from the fight, and not add more fuel to the fire. These 4, the Torah, speaking of God, having God's name always on the tip of his lips, and the morality and the holiness, and being the pursued over being the predator, was the key to Yosef's success. That's why he is Matzliach. I have 2 more minutes, and I'm going to wrap this up with a beautiful analogy to someone who lived in our generation, who passed away not too long ago, who embodied these 4 ingredients and was tremendously successful because of them. This was none other than Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. Same name, Yosef, right? Chacham Ovadia Yosef. Can you compare anybody to his level of scholarship in Torah? Very few. Few and far between. Can you compare anybody's success in disseminating Torah the way he did? No. Not in the past century. In the past century, our hats have to tip to him. Because he restored what it means, specifically for Sephardic Jewry, to learn halakha, Jewish law, in a proper fashion, uphold them. And we could go on and on. But because he was so diligent in his own Torah study, it brought him success. When it comes to the idea of having God's name at the tip of his tongue, do you know that it's recounted about Chacham Ovadia that when he would speak seemingly mundane to people, he would use the vernacular of Midrash, of Talmud, of the Torah. It was non-stop. He was like learning Torah and speaking to God, even when he'd be speaking to you. It's like non-stop. This is another thing that we can attribute his great success to. His morality and his holiness. Besides for the levels that he reached could not be reached if he wasn't himself pure and holy. But do you know that countless amount of mikvaot, ritual baths, in Eretz Yisrael and even around the world are because he pushed for it. He pushed for it politically, he pushed for it financially. Can you imagine the concept, for the leftist movement in Israel, the concept of having official mikvaot, ritual baths in every city in Israel, which is governed by the government? It's a tremendous thing. That's because of Chacham Ovadia Yosef. So the levels of purity that he not only fulfilled, but he encouraged, he told women, don't worry, you're still at the level to not cover your hair, you're still at the level to wear pants, don't worry. Just go to the mikveh. Just go to the mikveh. And with time, these people came closer and closer and closer. And then when it comes to the idea of being pursued, if anyone thinks that Chacham Ovadia Yosef had an easy street, easy life, think again. From when he took his first post in Egypt and had nothing but trouble over there, you know that the first chicken that he slaughtered, he wanted to do a nice gesture. And he brings the chicken that he just slaughtered, and he checked and he salted it, and he brings it to the president of the community of Egypt, Jewish man. And he presents it to him, and he was so thankful. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Later that evening, he attends, whether it was some type of banquet or feast, he sees that they put cheese and Parmesan on the chicken, and they ate it like that. Do you know how hurt he must have been? They threatened to kill him when he was in Egypt. Not the Egyptians, the Jews. The Jews of the community threatened to kill him because he was telling them that, you know, what you're doing is not proper with halakha, you're not acting the right way, you're not... Until he finally got back to Israel. Wait, you thought when he got back to Israel everything's good? No. He was a revolutionary in the way that he learnt and he taught Torah, specifically halakha. Rabbis and movements and politicians all were against him. But he stuck to his gun. He always made sure he was being pursued and he was not the predator. He was not going and attacking. He was just following his way and doing it the way that he was blessed to do it. These are lessons we can all learn from Yosef and apply to our lives. We can all commit to more Torah study on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. We can all commit to more heartfelt prayer, or being like Saba and Safta, or Babi and Zaidi, who would speak to Hashem when they're making the cholent or the schena, In the middle of the challah baking, they're speaking to Hashem. Hashem, make sure it's enough. I don't know about you, but my grandparents, my grandmother specifically, they don't measure how much salt goes into the bread and how much wheat and flour and all of these things. They don't know. They just, Hashem, 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 everything's Hashem. Doesn't happen like that anymore. When we start speaking to Hashem at every moment, you know the famous joke. The famous joke is someone pauses and they find themselves in a very busy parking lot and they're like, please Hashem, let me find the parking spot, please Hashem. 30 seconds, 6 seconds passes by, he sees one, okay Hashem, I don't need it, I found it, don't worry. No, thank Hashem for it. Always thank Hashem for it. And when it comes to holiness and morality, especially living in Florida, there's so much we can work on in that realm. In the merit of Yosef, in the merit of our success, in the merit of our children, hasten it and be strong with it. It's a temptation. I can guarantee you our temptation is nothing compared to the temptation of Yosef HaTzadik. And when it comes to machloket, any disagreements, the only winner is going to be the one who picks up and walks away. When you make yourself the pursued, that means you're saying, Hashem, I'm turning to you and only you. Not to my wisdom, not to my lawyer, not to my money, not to anything. Only to you, Hashem. Make sure you're the pursued. So just to recap, we started off with the idea of being an image to your children, being a good example that hopefully will get into their minds to promote them to make the right decisions even when we're not around them. And then we spoke about how in our lives, just like Hashem did to Yosef, look for those signs even on the way down. Because if we're really connected and committed, we'll find them. And then this 4-step recipe to having great success in our lives in every realm. May Hashem bless us in the merit of the Torah study, the merit of all of us coming here, that ourselves, our children, those who have grandchildren, our spouses, our family and friends, all Am Yisrael will have a tremendous amount of success. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Amen v'amen. Thank you everyone for coming. Next week we're not going to have class being that it is Chanukah, but the following Monday we're back on. Thank you everyone.